Hi, and welcome to Run Tall with Tim, the YouTube channel that's dedicated to all runners everywhere. I'm Tim, and I upload new running videos every single week. Today, I'm going to take a look at a brand new entry in the carbon-plated racing shoe market by Skechers. It's their GoRun Razor Elite. Now, this is a shoe that I've been really excited to try ever since I ran into Razor Plus. I love that Hyper Burst midsole material that they have in that shoe. And I was really curious as to the tweaks that they might make, whether they were going to be improvements or big disappointments. And so we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Oh, and if you want to skip around in this video, maybe just jump right to the parts that are most interest to you. I made it pretty easy. All you got to do is open the description. There you're going to see I've laid out some chapters. Just click on a timestamp for the part of the video that you want to watch, and it'll take you right there. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like to run in these shoes, give you a little bit of demo, and then when we get back, we're going to talk about all of that stuff and a whole lot more. Sort of nice, fun, easy run around town. Just a little less than 4.5 miles at an easy 11 minute mile pace. Let's just talk about this shoe now. So, this is really the third iteration of the Razor so far this year. Earlier they came out with the Razor 3, and then they came out with the Razor 3 Plus or the Razor Plus. I've seen it called both. And now they've got a carbon plated version to the Razor shoe. And so when I first ran in the Razor Plus, I was really excited about that Hyperburst midsole. Very comfortable. It has a relatively smaller stack height, so you get kind of that lower to the ground feeling when you're running in the shoe. But that Hyperburst material is still really highly cushioned, so it was protecting your feet. And it just made you feel like you still had a lot left in the tank in your legs at the end of your run. So when I heard that they were coming out with a carbon-plated version of the shoe, I was really excited. So, I pre-ordered the shoe some time ago, and I finally got my hands on it a couple days ago. And so I'm excited to share, my experience so far in the shoe. So these shoes cost $160 US. I've seen that on Skechers website. I also have seen it for $155 at Running Warehouse, so it's going to be right in that ballpark. The stated weight, now these are unbelievably light. So on Skechers website, they actually have it listed at 6.5 ounces. However, and that was for men's size 9, I wear men's size 9, so I put them on my scales, and they came in at 5.3 ounces or 151 grams. I weighed it several times. I started looking around, and I found at Running Warehouse on their website, They had it listed at 5.4 ounces. So I think we're closer or more in the ballpark with that 5.3, 5.4 ounce mark, which is ultra lightweight. Love it. Now let's turn and we'll look at that upper, see how they were able to keep all that weight down. Now it has a mono mesh polyester upper. This shoe is not just ultra lightweight, I would say it's ultra breathable. I had the sensation that as soon as I started to run in the shoe, a nice cool airflow throughout the upper. It was just fantastic. So if you live in a hot area, you're going to love the upper on this shoe. Now for me, it was in the high 30s, low 40s today when I was running in it, but it was super comfortable that way. I had that experience one other time so far this year, and that's in the Hoka Rocket X. That upper, I would say, is pretty equivalent. I think they're really on par with one another with what they've done with the upper on these shoes. Now, it also kind of reminds me that with the material and how translucent it is of the Adidas Adizero Pro, that cellular mesh material that they use. So it's kind of on par with that. So if you're familiar with that shoe, that the upper on this Razor Elite, it reminds me of that quite a bit. And you'll notice as I panned around that shoe from the toe box to the midsection of the shoe around to that heel counter, that there are 0 plastic overlays. So they did a terrific job in keeping the weight down on the shoe. Moving on now to the eyelet chain. Now this is about as basic and as simple as you could possibly get. They did reinforce the material around those eyelets, both on top as well as underneath the neck cage area. One notable thing about the eyelets, though, is that, if you are a fan or if you're used to using a runner's knot, they don't have that extra hole or eyelet for you to be able to do that. And the laces are short enough that if they did have, you wouldn't have a long enough lace. You'd have to replace your laces and able to use a runner's knot anyway. So, if you're a fan of the runner's knot, you're not going to be able to use it on the Razor Elite. Oh, and I will just note that if you do like to change out your laces, you might have a little bit of difficulty getting these laces out. I know I did. They basically just kind of punched small holes in this material that they poked those laces through. And it was a bit tricky getting those laces out. I like to pull the laces out so that we can get a good look both at the eyelet chain, but also at the tongue as well. And so let's just talk about that. So the tongue itself is super thin. It's kind of like a leathery material. It's not padded at all, and it's not gusseted. But I didn't have any issues with it migrating, on my foot. So it's fine. It's adequate. I don't think there's anything, like I said, necessarily special about the tongue. But if it's not broke, you don't need to fix it. All right, so let's take a look at the padding around the heel collar and the tab of the shoe. Or I might say the lack of padding around the heel collar and tab of the shoe. They have just a very minimal amount of padding in those areas. But the way that the way the shoe is designed, I didn't have any hot spots. I didn't feel like it was rubbing on my ankles. So it was comfortable enough. It's not a luxurious shoe. It's a racing shoe, so it's about what I would expect. Maybe a little bit less, though, than some of the other carbon-plated racing shoes that are out there. But there is a reason why it weighed 5.3 ounces on my scales, and I think this is part of it, that they really went minimalistic on the padding in those areas. Now let's look at the counter. There is virtually no structure here, and so much so that, it didn't bother me when I was out running. In fact, the way that midsole material is that they have in the shoe, there's a pretty deep heel pocket, or I felt like there was a deep heel pocket that kept me in place. And the way that the upper was snug across my midfoot, I still felt pretty locked in, even though there's very little to no structure in that heel. But one of the things that I just wanted to note, about that lack of structure in that heel counter, that it made it a bit tricky just putting my shoes on. There's so little structure that it was kept folding in on itself. So I really had to loosen up the laces far more than I would on other shoes to get my foot to slide in there. And it was a bit of a tug of war pulling that material up around, my heel. So just something to note. Looking at the midsole, it's got the same or identical stack height in this shoe as they do in the Razor 3 and the Razor Plus or the Razor 3 Plus. It has a 28 millimeter stack height in the heel and a 24 millimeter stack height in the forefoot for a 4 millimeter offset of their Hyper Burst midsole material. And they use what they call a supercritical process, which is a chemical term to describe how they're able to nitrogen infuse this material. And that's what makes it so lightweight, gives it tons of bounce and spring and energy return, which is exactly why I've enjoyed running in the Razor Plus so much. Now, you can imagine just how excited I was when I heard that they were going to take that shoe and infuse a carbon plate into that midsole material. And what Skechers has chosen to do was to put that plate, that carbon infused plate, only in the forefoot of the shoe. And so I was really curious, like how is this going to feel underfoot? And I can tell you it's fantastic. So, it rolls through my gait cycle very smoothly. It's that kind of carbon plate where you don't necessarily feel it underfoot in terms of, not being natural. And I can get that feeling in some carbon plated shoes where, they're so stiff that they can be a bit tricky to run in. I did not get that feeling at all. They took the Razor 3 shoe or the Razor 3 Plus, and by infusing that carbon plate, they just made it quicker. They just made it faster. I don't feel like they sacrificed any of the cushion, because that's one of the things I was really worried about is, putting that plate in the shoe that you might have to give up some of that cushion feeling. And I didn't get that at all in running in a shoe. I still felt like there was plenty of cushion to keep my legs safe and comfortable and still have some energy left in them when I finished my run. So I think they just did a fantastic job in the approach that they'd taken to update the Razor 3 to make it a racing shoe. And along those lines, and this is really important, and they did this with the Razor 3 and the Razor 3 Plus, is they have what they call M-Strike design to it. And that's just a method or a type of engineering or design of that midsole material to help you flow through your gait cycle a little more smoothly, where it promotes a midfoot strike. So that M-Strike promotes a midfoot strike. So you've got Hoka that has their Meta Rocker technology and Saucony that has their Speed Roll technology. Well, Skechers has their M-Strike technology, and you do know that it's there, and it does promote a midfoot strike. It's really comfortable. I feel, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, like my heel sets nice into a deep pocket where I felt pretty secure, even when I was going around corners or picking up the pace or what have you. But when I'm landing on that midfoot, it just feels like, there's a bit of a rocker feeling to it. I just really enjoyed that. It felt like my effort to run in these shoes was being helped along by the technology that Skechers has put into the Razor Elite. So let's flip the shoe over and see how they're protecting all of that Hyper Burst midsole foam. And you can see that just like with the Razor 3 and the Razor 3 Plus, they're using Goodyear rubber, and it's a thin layer. Now, they do have a little bit less of the rubber on this shoe than they do in the Razor Plus, and you'll see that there's a little bit missing there in that arch part of the foot, but they have it in all of the high abrasion areas that you're going to need it, especially on a carbon plated racing shoe. So they have it around the heel and along that outside edge, and then from the midfoot all the way up to the toe. And having run in the Razor Plus now for a while, so far I can say that Goodyear rubber is holding up really well. As I was running in the Elite, I didn't notice any kind of slippage out there. I felt like, that Goodyear rubber was keeping me pretty tight to the road. So, I think from, a safety standpoint, or if you're worried about, slipping when you're out picking up the pace, I don't think you're going to have that issue in this shoe. Hey, I really enjoyed making this video for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, maybe to give it a thumbs up. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.